All right, welcome back to another episode of Hoops in the P.N.W. I think, and I probably mess this up every single time now, but I think we're in episode 10, so double digits, which is pretty impressive. That also means we're like 10 weeks, or we're well beyond 10 weeks of quarantine at this juncture, because that was kind of the initial purpose. But nonetheless, we've got another female head coach on today, and Sara is one of those that I've really admired the work that she's put together down at Eastlake and what she's done. And we've obviously gotten to know each other a lot better here, being in the same district tournament now, and having crossed paths before, certainly in summer basketball, as we were just talking about off the air a second ago. But one of those that has, what a lot of people are looking for, I think, if you're an ultimate competitor, is the state championship. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, and maybe kind of how that parlayed itself a little bit into this season, kind of maybe that segue, maybe some of the challenges there as well. But somebody that I really have looked forward to getting on board, and she's just done such a fantastic job. And with the limited numbers of female coaches that we have in the girls game, she's one of those that's, the number of layers that she's got in her life, able to mix and match being a mom and a wife and a coach and all those different components, well enough to even find some time to be with us today. So Coach Goldie, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to make it on, and I'm sorry that it took a little bit longer to get me on, but I got to say I'm happy. If it is episode 10, I like that, because that was my dad's basketball number. So. All
right, perfect. I like it. Well, give us some background. Now, I just know you, and you kind of gave this a little bit off the air a second ago, but give us some background, maybe your interest in the game, assuming a player, then of course, some coaching background as well, just so we can kind of get some perspective. I think what's been really good, opening with this angle is it's really opened my eyes to, okay, we've got some players here. We've got some people that got cut and didn't play. Myself, I was awful, but I loved the game. So there's always kind of been some different components to it. And ultimately, we've gotten to the same point. We're coaching our own program. So go ahead and give us some of your background.
Okay. So I grew up in a basketball family.
Okay.
Some people have heard this story before, but both of my parents played on the national basketball team in Iran.
Okay.
So they're both great athletes and played the game, and we grew up around it. But growing up, there were not a lot of girls. I'm not that old. I'm actually, tomorrow I turned 41, so I'm still 40.
Okay, nice.
And I played on co-ed teams, like rec co-ed teams growing up. Only girl. There were rules, like the girl always had to be on the court and all
Nice.
that kind of craziness.
Sure.
But so, I grew up around the game. So I had a love of the game, but I didn't play it as much as the kids today are, because the opportunity wasn't there. So the love and the fire for the game just never went away, I think, because I wasn't overplaying.
Sure.
And I'm sure we'll maybe talk about that at some point. But
yeah.
So I played through junior high, played in high school. I was, a star on the JV team, swing player, got a little bit of time and did what I could. Played on some really great teams at Eastlake that went to state both my junior and senior year. And then I had an opportunity to get into coaching right when I graduated. So I graduated and got a phone call from a friend who was a family friend who was a principal at a junior high.
Okay.
And brought me in to coach. And so that was my first taste of coaching. And I got to say, that was probably my second hardest interview I ever had.
Nice. Okay.
So I always, like to talk about coaching interviews are not easy.
No.
So I got that early on, and I think it helped me when I graduated from college in my big girl job interviews.
Sure.
I own those because I'd been through some harder stuff. And so I started there, and then within 2 years got a call from a former teacher at Eastlake that was like, hey, come be my varsity assistant.
Sure.
So I jump in, I think my third year out. So my brother was still a senior there, and started coaching as an assistant. I was a defensive coach. And so I did that for a couple years with Coach Crowder. And then from there, I never stopped. That's where it started. And I literally never stopped. So it's been 20 some odd years, and there's not been a season that I haven't coached.
Love it.
So I was an assistant for about 10, and I've been a head for about 11, I think 11 or 12. So 1 year at Redmond High School, my first year head coaching.
Gotcha.
and then alma mater opened up, and so I applied for that, and I've been here the rest of the time.
All right. So you gave me a couple good things. So if I'm doing my math correctly here, so you're coaching at 21.
I was coaching at high school at actually before 21 at 20
Jeez.
as an assistant.
That's
Yeah.
that's unheard of. I mean,
I've almost been coaching longer than I haven't at 41 or whatever. So
yeah, no, that's so impressive. I love that. And I certainly didn't know that. That's amazing. So, but you've been really connected to that area, it sounds like,
yeah, I had
all
a
your
short
life.
stint. I had a short stint where I went to get my teaching degree over in Ellensburg, and so and actually probably got some of my best mentorship under Coach Robbie Robb at
Okay.
East Valley. I literally drove 90 miles a day to coach over there through the
Jeez.
snow.
Nice.
My little Volkswagen Cabrio. No, it was crazy. But so I coached with him for 2 years, and I think that's where he is just a mind, and so
Yeah.
he got me kind of really intrigued in not just showing up and giving what I knew as a player and sort of that thing, but really trying to understand the game better. So it wasn't until almost probably halfway through those assistant years that I actually started paying attention and trying to get
Right.
better and get that knowledge that you need.
Yeah. Give you some components to, if you're willing to make that transition to a head coach, there's a little more than just being maybe the good cop compared to the
Yep.
bad cop on the daily basis, if you will.
Yep.
Right. So I love the 90 miles. Are we talking 90 miles round trip, or are we talking
Round trip. Yeah. Round trip. So Yakima to Ellensburg
boy?
is about 40 miles, I think 40,
So
45.
this sounds like my 2-year window as a boys assistant up in Burlington. So
Yeah.
we lived out on Camino Island. I was teaching in Marysville. So that was, however many miles, 30 some.
Yeah.
And then after school, Marysville, I had to drive up to Burlington, which was 30 some miles away. And then done at boys hoops, drove home to Camino. So it was a 100-mile trip every day during the winter season so I empathize with you. But what makes it great though is, it shows you had such an interest in the game and wanted to be connected to it. There wasn't going to be something that got in the way. You wanted to go out and find a way. Now you might have had to deal with a little dicier weather than we did over here on this side, but
it was good for me to learn because I was a big chicken, and so I still am when it comes to driving in the snow. But in my family, we have roles too, and my husband does the snow driving. So
oh, sure. No, but I can think of some of those ups and downs getting to Yakima from Ellensburg. Boy, a little
sure, and
dicey.
cell phone service isn't very good, so I guess that's the life skills of being able to change tires and different things like that. That we actually learned. We didn't have
Good.
somebody back in the day.
For sure. Now you said, I love the coach interview piece. We haven't done this yet, so I'm glad you went here. So you said it was the second hardest interview you've had. You can share your first if you want, but
Yeah.
why was it your second hardest interview? What made it challenging?
Just the I guess seriousness about it, or the drive for those principals to get the right person in place for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was a JV middle school.
Right. Sure.
She is like cream of the crop. I mean, she's a great leader. And I guess maybe part of it too was the fact that I was just graduated from high school. So,
Right.
having to ask me how I want to deal with parents was sort of a,
right.
Yes. But I gotta say, yeah, I mean, the interview over in Yakima was brutal too. That was tough. And so, yeah, I think that in our society today, sports plays such a big role and in people's lives and their livelihood and their happiness, which is why we're all struggling a little bit right now.
Agreed.
So I think that, people take those jobs seriously, as they should. So, I mean, yeah, it was mostly just it wasn't just like hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. And then, what do you know about the game of basketball? It was really like, how do you handle parents, and how do you, you're young, how do you handle kids? I mean, I remember it, and it was so long ago. So
yeah, no, so good. So I went through, I've mentioned this a couple times, I think on a couple episodes, I went through 7 rejections before I finally got Lake Stevens' job, which was my first head job. And shoot, by the time you get to that fifth, sixth, seventh one, you're knocking them out there. You got some practice but gosh, the angle of being so young, as you'd mentioned, shoot, you haven't gone through life to be asked about how you're going to deal with parents, how you're going to deal with, holy smokes, what a great perspective. But it's true. Everyone that I can think about just off the top of my head, and shoot, even go back to Lake Stevens one, you're sitting in front of, at least in my case, it felt like 5 to 9 people and a couple teachers, you've got a couple parents, players, and you really get tested in terms of your philosophies, it seems so minimal about basketball. It was all about the periphery sort of things.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think it's funny because you had mentioned earlier about, I'd sent you a note saying, hey, is there anything I need to prepare for? But the idea of being over prepared. And I think that interview taught me that you need to be over prepared for these things. And so
yes.
I feel like from that point on, I sort of knocked out every interview I ever had the opportunity to have, the privilege to have.
Right.
I share this stuff with the girls too,
Yeah.
uh, and so, I mean, these are parts of their lives that they're going to have, coming up pretty soon too. So it's kind of fun
Yep.
to be able to talk about our experiences with them, and
Yeah.
uh, having had started this, at least down this path so young,
Yep.
like you said, it's like, man, we didn't even know, what our goals were in life or our priorities, anything.
Jeez.
We just
No
loved the
kidding.
basketball, and somebody was like, hey, you want to coach? Sure. But how cool though to get, to, like you said, to get those opportunities and,
Yeah.
stumble and fall and learn and
Yeah. No, so good. And I think maybe one of the young mistakes that I made when I finally got the opportunity. In fact, one of the 7 times I got rejected was actually by Lake Stevens. But came back full circle and got the opportunity. And they decided ultimately just to stay in building because it was convenient at the time. So I understand that. Everybody gets that. Just didn't work out in terms of the timing. But shoot, early on in my career, I remember telling a few of my players, I had a mental notes of schools that said no. So if we ever were going to see them, I would never share who it was ultimately, but it became almost like a personal thing. And
sure.
but I've shared that out too in terms of those experiences, like, hey, I've got rejected 7 times, but I still wanted to be head coach. It didn't slow me down for ultimately what I wanted to do. And we've parlayed that into, hey, if you really want to do something in life, it doesn't have to be basketball coaching, but whatever it is, just because somebody says no doesn't mean that's the end of whatever that dream or goal is. Such a
Yeah.
good life skills component to it. No, one of the funny things, I'll throw this out there too. I ultimately didn't think my interview was going well with Lake Stevens the second time, because in this long table was the AD at the other end. And we finally get to the basketball component of things. It's been an hour and I'm going to spend 15 minutes on basketball related stuff. And I'm drawing something up on the board behind me. I actually think it was like, how are you going to approach a 1-2-2 zone, something like that. And so I'm so excited. I'm like so prepared, and I'm getting this up there. And I happen to scan the room, and I see the AD at the far end, and he's doing the whole nodding off thing. And I thought, oh boy, this is going well. I'm in big trouble if he's nodding off right now. But nonetheless, I got the job.
There you go. Yeah. They knew they wanted you, probably.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
You
Well,
wanted.
it helped having the old guys that are with me now. They, godfathers of the program, as I've said a few times. They were on the interview committee, and they're great. And I'm
I gotta
thankful.
say, I look at your staff and I'm just like, yeah, Randy has it so good. That is so awesome to have, just even the historical piece, but just that knowledge and
Yes.
in your assistants and people that just love the game the way you do,
Yes.
want to keep doing it, because that is not easy to come by,
Right. No question. No question.
so
No, when Gail's been with me every year but one. He had to take a year off in there, and it was probably like halfway through, but it's always something he's wanted to do. I've tried to pay both those guys. They'll get mad at me if I do. They'll say, hey, I'm just going to put it back in the program, so don't even bother. And every now and then I've slipped them a few $100 and said, I'm not taking it back. You're not depositing it. Go do something with your wives.
awesome.
But ultimately they say too, and they share this at our banquet all the time, just how grateful they are for, being able to interact with kids. But you're exactly right. I'm so thankful and grateful because I think between the two of them, it's like 80 years worth of basketball coaching experience. It's just insane.
This is crazy.
But no, it's awesome. Really good. This is a great way to start. I love it. So, philosophy of your program, I want to get into that a little bit. You're a family with an
Yep.
E.
Yep.
And I know Joe had spoke to this in episode 2. He's a big family guy, and I think we all are to some degree. Explain that. It seems kind of like the pillar of what you guys are all about. Explain how it makes up what Eastlake basketball is all about.
So when I first took over the job at Eastlake, I had been an assistant there for 5 years off and on. So a couple years early on, and then 3 years, kind of closer to when I finally took over. I left for a year, went to Redmond for a head job. But when I came back, I knew, you have to coach kind of the way that you are.
Yes.
And so family, if anybody knows me, my family is like 100% number one. I mean,
Yep.
we do everything together. I have a big family. I've got like 25 plus cousins, and every
Jeez.
Thanksgiving, even through basketball, we find a way to get together. We rent houses. We do everything together. I've kind of got some people joke and say it's, your little Persian mafia. I've always had the support of my family behind me, both my immediate and my extended.
Right.
So I wanted the girls to know that feeling. So I think that that's the premise that I kind of went out to teach on,
Right.
and to have that be our foundation. And I remember early on being super intentional about talking to them about the idea of like families don't always get along. You don't always agree, but you always love each other.
Yep.
And so you're always willing to come back to the table, or to, you kind of set out on quests together and you accomplish them. And it's not always easy, but somebody's got your back at the end of the day. And so we would talk about stuff like, hey, if you hear somebody talking about one of your teammates, I'm not saying go pick a fight, but I'm saying stop them,
Right. Sure.
table, if your parents are talking negatively about our team, and whether it be a teammate, how they played, or their commitment level or whatever, or coaching and decisions, just don't be rude, but ask them to stop. Just say, can you please not talk about that in front of me, because it makes it hard for me to kind of be a part of and buy into this idea of our family, the inner circle. And
Right.
now, it's not to say that parents don't play a huge role in what we do, as you know.
Sure.
I mean, I tell parents at my parent meeting that we're in a partnership together to help raise these kids.
Yep.
And so I want those lines to be open, but I also try to set boundaries around what things we prefer not to have parent involvement in, as far as playing time or strategy, or not to say in the years that I've done it, it's never happened, because with some kids,
Yep.
they need their parent support more than others. And so we've done that. But really, kind of back to the point of your question, is family was really important, and kind of setting that tone so that we could sort of move forward. My leadership, that I guess that was just my core value. And so I sort of brought that in, because one thing I realized is you can take what you get from all your mentors and stuff, but if you're trying to coach like somebody else, it's hard to just mimic and be somebody else forever.
Right.
You might be able to in small moments, but you really have to develop it into something that comes from your heart. Because coaching is about your heart and your soul and pouring it into it. And so you got to be true to kind of yourself and your values too. So that's where the family piece came from.
No, and I love that. I think the point that you made with your extended family is, being as large as it is, you're associating your family and the extension of it with basketball there too. Hey, your family just isn't your inner circle when you go home every single time, at least in our program. I can't speak for other programs, but in our program, this is an extension of that. These are like your cousins, let's say, if you will, to some degree. And you're not necessarily going to always agree. And I think that's certainly, I'm going to probably say more in girls basketball than boys, having coached both. You really have to navigate some of those tough conversations, whether it's with teammates. I love the avenue. I think coaches would really struggle with this. I think I would struggle with this by telling or trusting, I think is probably even a better word, trusting your players to maybe approach parents that might be having those really challenging conversations that you probably don't want to be a part of or hear, but to go so far as to say, hey, I don't want you to necessarily speak to that. You can do that on your own, but that puts me in a tough spot. I love the angle on that too. that's a great thing to even bring up at a parent meeting to, say, hey, we don't want to put our kids in situations where,
Totally.
because then it's going to fester stuff down to the girls themselves. And that's, where we're
For
really
sure.
trying to steer clear from. So
I think you've probably seen it just because the sheer number of years you've coached is where when you've had too much of that, it affects the team
oh, for sure.
much. And it, one of some of my most successful years, that hasn't been at bay, and it's really been, it affected, for sure it affected me, but it affected the girls and
Yeah.
how they felt about playing.
Right.
And it's bad where then, the years where we haven't had that, which has been, I'm really lucky most of the years,
Yep.
it's been so much more free, whether we're successful or not. And, the expectations are there. And, after you win, or once you're winning more often, people are
Right.
gonna. And so,
Sure.
that's been a different and a new thing for me to kind of deal with as a coach. But yeah, and again, those are such tough things. But I always try to, like you said, I don't know if I say it how I exactly say it at the parent meeting, but I say it out to, when I'm watching my kids' teams. I say to parents, I said, listen, it's really detrimental for kids to hear you talking negatively about other teammates or coaches. When you guys, and I do say that to parents, when you guys are in your room at night or whatever, the kids are put to bed and you guys are downstairs, go ahead and talk as much as you want.
Sure.
Yeah. I think it feels good to get it out and have an opinion, but don't do it in front of your kids.
Yeah.
It just helps the team. And so I try to spread that message, because I think in youth sports, we need that message
For sure. And if you're forwarded about it and upfront about it from the beginning, if it is something that comes up, you can come back to say, hey, remember we talked about this at the parent meeting? We've had this conversation before, and we're going down that road that we don't ultimately want to go down.
Right.
It's such a vital thing to have happen. And ultimately, I guess I can't say always, but traditionally as adults, we can handle it. It's the young ladies, the teenagers that take it in a lot of different directions that we don't want them to go. And that's where we're trying to steer clear ultimately.
Yep.
So no,
Sure.
I love that. That's really, really good stuff. With that family idea, what are some examples of what that might look like, maybe say during the season? Are there some things that you are intentional about using that word? I get fined for that word at school if I use that word. It's kind of a buzzword bingo sort of thing. Yeah. Yep. Are there some things that you're intentional about during the season that are maybe kind of standards that fit with that family philosophy?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we do is, I think a lot of teams do it, but we've always done, team dinners, and
Yep.
we've done, certain team breakfasts, or we do a retreat at the beginning of the year. We sleep in the gym and do that. And we kind of talk a little bit about, what that looks like on the court, what it looks like off the court.
Mm-hmm.
But, you do have to be careful that it's not just a buzzword, and that it's something that you actually are intentional about. And so, I think sometimes we have to have conversations about, well, hey, we're, this is a tough spot we're in right now. And we'll have like family meetings, or, it's a team meeting, but we'll meet and we'll discuss. And honestly, early on we did that a lot. And then, and you probably know this too, you speak to this, it just gets passed down.
Yeah.
And so once you've been doing it for like, well, we didn't have to have one of those this last year.
Right.
That place, but we've had to do stuff where we've, where we mix things up. We don't always, I heard you talking, I can't remember who it was with, about, it's not always about basketball.
Yeah.
So we've done stuff where we've taken days off and just gone to a movie. We went when Hidden Figures came out. I wanted the kids to not be thinking about postseason and state. And so we took a day off. It was during practice time, so I didn't make them double dip.
Sure.
And we did it later so they could kind of be away from the stress and the excitement of the parents, like getting us ready to go or whatever. And we went and watched a movie, went to dinner together. The girls sort of took it to the next level, which was nice as my family started to grow, in that they didn't need me to be there to do family stuff.
Nice. Yes.
So they would just they do breakfast before school. If we canceled a practice on Saturday, they'd say, we're meeting at Sammamish Cafe for breakfast. And the older girls would pick up younger girls.
Love it.
And so that's really like what family sort of looks like, during the season. And early on, I did have to say stuff like, and it's funny with liability with the school district and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
well, hopefully all the older kids make sure the younger kids have rides,
Yeah. There's
So,
nice innuendos you can throw out there, and it's totally fine. It's just something that came out of my mouth, and
yep.
for sure. No, I love the ownership piece. You ultimately, as coaches and as teachers, I guess to some degree too, you're trying to get it to a place where your kids take that and go with it, and now all of a sudden, instead of you facilitating everything, you just get to be a part of it. And that's as you're building programs, I'll even take my model history kids that I have year long at school. Early on, you're setting routines and establishing expectations, but through this transition into a pandemic and distance learning, for the most part, they were really good, and did a pretty good job of staying. But they understood what the expectations were. And now I was just kind of facilitating or a part of it, not necessarily, having to lead everything. And, ultimately in a program like that, when you're talking about with teams that you coach, that's when you're like, okay, this is what we've been looking for. And certainly I would imagine to some degree, based on maybe like the youth of your program, you're gonna have to do a little more facilitating the younger your teams are.
Yep.
Your older ones. So,
and I think that's one of the things. I think when I look back to the 10ish or so 11 years, we were so intentional and really
yep.
those things. And then had some great leadership and great captains that passed those things down. And then I got my group of kids that Gina and Cameron and Stacy and Liz. I had a group of kids that came through that kind of contributed as freshmen.
Right.
But to have 4 years, and we were a 3-year school prior to that. So
right, much like us
yep.
too.
So having that 4 years where those kids actually made varsity as freshmen and either started or really contributed to a bigger degree, that's when they started taking over, and it was so rewarding as a coach. And then when they left, we did have some big shoes to fill from that leadership standpoint. And on that other podcast I was on with one of my former players about the state championship a couple months ago, I was telling you about off air, my player brought that up, and it was kind of cool to hear her perspective as a senior on that team who got to kind of coast with those other kids being
right.
leaders.
Yeah.
And having to step into the role. And one of the I guess things that also would answer your question about what family looks like during the regular season is when kids can come, when it's open enough for kids to come to coaches and go, what, I don't think your halftime talk, I think your halftime talk and your post-game talk should have been switch, coach. Let's talk about that. That's even with 1-year leaders. I back to that state championship team, and we had that conversation after Mount Si lost. And so I think those things make such a big difference, and just trying to be open and let the kids know that we're kind of in this thing together.
Sure.
I always tell when I talk to coaches about if I give any advice, I'm like, don't try to look perfect. Like, own your mistakes and verbalize them.
Yeah.
I mean, just tell them when you made a mistake, and because it just makes it so much easier for them to come to you.
Yes.
And it's not about questioning. I don't think there's ever a lack of I've never dealt with a lack of respect from players.
Sure.
Yeah. But maybe others in the game, but definitely not my players. And so anyways, I think that all sort of ties back to that piece. But yeah, for sure, like as the younger kids coming in, I told my assistants in the off season, I was like, even last year in the regular season, I was like, we need to get back to some of the early days.
Yes.
Even we stopped traveling as much. I know you talked to somebody about this in a different podcast about AAU and a lot of kids being gone in July. That's been a big struggle. Just if I think back over the years, like those kids, how are you still able to make ground the way you did when those kids are missing? It's tough.
Agreed. Well, and I think you've done Western a couple of times. We've seen each other up there a couple of times.
Yeah, we did. I think we did Western once. We did Gonzaga.
Yep.
And that was great. But I wasn't able to do. I say wasn't able to. Our program is not huge. we basically, and it really is, I hate it, but um, kids self-cut before they
Yes.
they don't even give us a chance, because
Yep.
the buzz around school, and it's not me saying it, this is what I hear, is like, man, the Lady Wolves program is the best program in the build. I mean, everyone wants to be a part of it, and it's so fun. And you know who those girls are walking the halls. I mean, I get this from the leadership teacher and football coach, but I still only get 20 kids,
Yes.
and it's like, how do we like share the love with 30 kids, And
Yes.
so we've had 2 years in my head coaching that we've had a C team. One was this past season, and one was the very first year we went to 4. And, right now I've got 28 kids engaged in our teams calls, virtual calls. So I'm like, okay, we got this. We're going to have a third team this year again. And,
Yeah.
just because you were talking to Coach Artie about this, I think the idea of kids
Yes.
on a different level of expectations, that seem having it be about the fun and learning the game and being impacted by a strong program that wants to build kids in togetherness.
Yes.
Everything together is a program. All of our team dinners are together, so that's another family thing, is like everything is together. It's not JV, varsity, and
Nice.
um so anyways, I think having trying to just spread that impact across more kids in the school is kind of ultimately where I'd like to see us grow a little bit too.
Yeah. No, we're in the same boat. We get a lot of especially with the success that we've had. We have so many girls that self-cut because, one, they're like, oh, I'm not gonna. The fear of getting cut is the biggest thing. But two, oh, I can't compete with those players, or I'm not going to be a varsity player right away, or I'm not going to, there's so many just different pieces that we've been really impacted by that have really, I mean, we used to be, my first, I want to say 4 or 5 years, we had 4 teams. We had a C team, and then of course our freshman down at Cavallero, and it was amazing. I mean, we'd have, 45 kids try out, and I don't think we cut anybody. And that's why I was so impacted by Coach Artie's, piece at Gonzaga Prep. And I mean, they keep everybody, and it's just this, I mean, I had to really kind of reflect on how can we make that happen? What's going to help us get just kids out? And again, I'm totally cool with if we have 20 kids that don't ever want to have aspirations of being a varsity player and just want to play, then sweet, let's do it. Let's find a way to make it happen.
Yeah, it's funny. Just to kind of piggyback off of that. So this last year, we had 20, let me get it right, 23 or 24 kids in the program.
Yep.
But because of sort of the level of play of some of our kids that were in this past season, we knew that we weren't going to be able to have, like, our JV and varsity. We probably had 14 that could run the way we typically run our JV and varsity.
Right.
And then we had a bunch of kids that were interested. And I think it was my mom heart or something, or your parent heart.
Sure.
I can't, these kids want to play. I can't turn them away. It wasn't, I mean, there was a good 7 kids, and I'm like,
sure.
So literally we got so creative. We had, we just had swing rosters. We had 7 C team kids, 2 swung up to JV, and we had 10 varsity kids, 3 swung, back and forth. And so we just made it work. And I got to say, my AD was like, Sara, we're never doing this again. My coaches were stretched thin, but after our banquet, a virtual banquet, if you will, it was like, my guy that came back after retirement, Steve Jones, he has been a part of the program for like 20 some odd years. And he had retired a few years back. He came back to help me this year because I was in a bind. And he took that C team, and he literally texted me before this podcast and was like, when can we talk? I want to talk goals on C team. I'm coming back. I'm committed to these. Because that banquet, those C team kids, that some of them were brand new to the game of basketball, they were on that call for almost 2 hours, didn't drop off. They stayed on, they were engaged. And it was like, I don't even feel like we did as good a job as we could have. So, there's ways to get creative and make it work. And just to see the impact on the kids in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
It was so rewarding. So Yeah, they got it right to keep those kids and find a way. And I think, I mean, they've got bigger numbers, but I just think that over time you can build that, you
For
know?
sure. Well, and I would go right back at the AD and say, hey, here's really the true value of that, using those things that you had just mentioned, how impactful. And of course, now you've got somebody, a coach that wants to come back and go that route. You know, I used to, when I got started, I had a C team, a freshman coach at Caballero, you know, coached that level. He loved that level for whatever reason, you know, but he coached it for 25 plus years. And it was just about, I mean, it worked. He loved the schedule, but he loved just those kind of kids. And you know how that goes. I mean, freshman level, you might get one or two to come through your program and be a program kid, but ultimately they're there because they want to have fun. They're just going to play the game. These kind of things I think are so important, and especially with, you know, the struggle economically, I think we're going to be in for a little while. Boy, these kids need those kind of outlets. We got to be able to be creative, as you had mentioned, and find ways to get more kids engaged, even if it might mean a grumpy AD every now and then.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think afterwards, I think, you know, sharing that with him, he sees it different. But yeah, I mean,
Yes.
because it is it's a struggle. Nothing good comes easy, you know, and
Yep.
so I think we definitely experience that there. And yeah, but I do think that the expectations have to be a little bit different
Sure.
for that team to
Yeah.
kind of fit with what they're looking for too.
Sure. No, that's very fair. Right up front with them too. Like, hey, here's what this is all about, and if you want to, you know, stay true to it, and we've got an opportunity for you. But this is, you know, you got to be very transparent about that. I agree entirely.
Yeah. And we had that conversation with those kids at the moment of cuts, because we do face
Yes.
to face cuts. I cut kids individually. I mean, I cut and keep kids face to face. So I do a meeting with all kids, you know, the last day before you know,
Worst day in sports, by the way.
yeah, it is. It's so hard. And even honestly, when I had to tell kids they're on JV, you know,
Yeah,
sometimes have been some of the hardest conversations. But
for sure.
we do like to do those face to face and give them. I mean, they put themselves out there, so we do the same. We return that favor.
Now,
But
do you guys make those decisions after 3 days, 4 days?
we do three. Yep. So we do it at the end, typically at the end of the third day.
Do
That
you practice together with your JV kids
we do. Yep. So
the
JV
whole
varsity is together, and then C
the whole
team.
time?
Yes, I mean, so this year was sort of different. Typically we're in the gym at the same time.
Yep.
We do a lot of things together, and then we'll break off and do things separate. It just depends on numbers in the year and
Sure, sure, sure,
uh,
sure.
a level of, you know, play. I
Right.
will say though, with the bind that we were in this year, I called it a bind, but it ended up being a positive thing. I basically had the top 14 kids. So I had the JV and the varsity, and you know, when you challenge kids, I mean,
Yeah.
we have the best job. They step right up to the challenge, and
Agreed.
they got better. I mean, those JV kids got a lot better. So maybe that makes up a little bit for the missing of June ball.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, and I've always been a big fan of practicing together. It's actually one of the big things that I wanted to start right away. Is it's going to speed up their certainly growth, but their transition to that next level. I mean, if you have to wait until the following season to get them, you know, up to speed, I think you're just going to be behind consistently. Whereas we kind of share with them from the outset, hey, you're probably gonna get your butt beat every single day to some degree. Stay persistent, you know. It's about, and if you guys win a drill, I'm gonna celebrate with you guys like crazy, you know,
For
and
sure.
just celebrate it. But you know, out of the 15 years, I think there's probably been 2 years where it was just such a difference. I mean, we would still do a lot of drill stuff together, but anything, you know, that you needed to break down, we would split. But for the most part, man, we've just been such a big proponent of keeping both groups together, because it just, that development's going to go that much faster, and they're going to learn. They need to learn. I mean, ultimately, if they're going to have success at that next level, you know, just because of the speed and, you know, the physicality of the varsity level of game and play.
Yep.
Um, One thing I think has really helped us too is we don't cut. Well, we do cut players that won't be in our program. However, we don't decide teams until 10 days in.
Oh wow, that. I like to tell me a little bit more about that. I like that.
So, because we practice together,
Yeah.
we get down to whatever our number is going to be. So traditionally, we keep fairly small, like 18 to 22 is probably a fair number,
Yep.
somewhere in that range for two teams. And we just put the list in alphabetical order and say, hey, we'll see you Thursday. But we still have 7 days to go before we ultimately decide who's varsity and who's JV. So, and those 10 days are as competitive 10 days as we'll have all season. I mean,
Yeah.
and we do it every year, and I love it. The only ones that know their varsity kids are seniors.
Yeah.
It's the only thing. So they have the out. But it's been so good for us, and it's really kind of helped validate some decisions that some tough decisions that I needed to make, because we've had, I'm sure everybody has, those first 3 days, you have the tryout wonders. They're just incredible. And you're like, okay, is this really for real? I mean, is this something that's going to be consistent? And then, like with one young lady, she was a junior, and on paper for us, she was going to be a JV kid, full-time JV kid for sure. But she had an amazing amazing 3 tryout days. I'm like, well, shoot, we can use her. She's going to be, but we didn't make a decision. And she was consistently that way for the next 7 days. And it just validated for us, okay, hey, she did it for 10 days. She's in. Whereas there's been a few that have had those 3 amazing days. And then, okay, the true colors, kind of who they are, kind of pan out. But I think it's been really beneficial. So it's helped us make the right decision instead of be like, oh no, boy, what did we do?
Yeah, for sure.
3 days in,
Yeah. No, that's something I'm going to bring up. I took a little note over here so I don't forget, bring up to my coaching staff and just have some conversation around it. Cause I think because we do our one-on-one conversations, and I literally spend 40 minutes or so out
Yeah, right.
meeting with each of the kids, we definitely talk to them about where we see them. And if they're still sort of a cusp kid and we don't know for sure,
Yep.
We have the ability to be able to have that conversation in those meetings. So
right.
They know that, they're sort of still in a fluid roster spot.
Right.
And, I think all coaches sort of say this, but we do try to talk about kids too. Like, hey, like there's no ceiling here. Like if you play somebody and you move up in the depth chart throughout the course of the season, you never know illness. We've had it all where, we've had to pull kids up and, and sometimes you use kids for just that one thing that they do, because the opportunity presented itself, and now here they are on your bench, and it's like, okay, we've got a bulldog face guarding defender.
Yep.
She's going to get more minutes than somebody that maybe has higher skill than her because they're somebody else, and it's kind of cool to be able to have that ability to kind of get a little bit deeper on see them at that current time, but also to keep those options open.
Yeah, no. And I always kind of say when we get down to I say it after day 3, but I also say it when we finally make the decision, varsity JV wise, day 10, I'm like, prove me wrong. I more times than not, I'm right, but I'm not so proud. I'm not gonna say, man, I made a mistake. You're with us, or whatever it's gonna be. We just want to make sure whatever decisions we make, we're not sending it backwards. We have no problem going the other direction.
Sure.
And so it's been something that I think has been really fruitful. And then, as a coaching staff, we're able to have those conversations every day. We can validate instead of 3 days in your
game. You don't have to know who's on.
Right.
You don't know until the end of that. I mean, it's funny, it's like the school district makes, decisions based on the transportation department. I think coaches sometimes make decisions based on having to take pictures for the program.
Yes, exactly right. Awesome stuff. All right, let's move forward. What are some ask Christina this too. What are some challenges as a female head coach? Have you run into anything? Did you have anything maybe early on in your career that were really logistically challenging? We all talk about, obviously our first head job in that first year is nuts, but as a female head coach, is there anything that maybe I'm totally immune to because I didn't even think about it? Did you run into any logistical challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, for me, just I think a combination of probably being a younger head coach, but also being a female. Nobody ever assumes you're the head coach. I was the opposite, and so and you sort of make excuses for it, but it happens definitely.
Right.
Where it's like, they talk to the tall person over there, or the tall guy that's my assistant, as if they're the head coach. So that's one of the things that sort of, you deal with it. It's not the end of the world, but it kind of it's definitely there.
This is Christina having to she got on a bus and the bus driver's waiting for the coach to sign the permission slip to take off. Oh, that's
Yes.
me. That's
You're like, that's me. He's like, can I see your ID? Yeah, no, for sure. So there's that. I've actually, dealt with some stuff with officials, and not even necessarily directed at me, but even other female coaches in our league.
Christina gets that too.
Yep.
It's real. It's real.
I actually witnessed that with her, and I was not happy.
Yeah.
But I think, I think that, I was able to reach out to her and be there for her, support her, and then just sort of share the story. But yeah, so there's been some stuff with officials, some with, just people just assuming that they're not, that you're not the head coach, and just because of your size and the fact that you're a female and not a male. But and I would say the other thing, and I think you talked to Coach Artie about this too, is that for me, I just want this experience for the girls to be as good, if not better, than for the boys. And that's a huge struggle.
Yes.
That is a huge, huge struggle. And I think even from a support standpoint, like I just had, boys sports are bigger and more important than girls. And that's how people act, and they're not. So I think our program has tried really hard, and I've had some great boosters over the years that have really kind of joined me in that mission and did everything they could to make it possible. So whether it be, getting the same nice travel sweats, being able to push to get to do some travel tournaments, getting fans and, pizza parties at our games in the, commons, youth, or, senior night, having, just reaching out to where they could to make it happen. But it's definitely an added level of effort, I think, on the girls' side. And so, while I think, I think that people do respect the girls and the work that they do, and I'm not saying that we're, treated, grossly any different, but there is an underlying piece of being a female head coach. And I had somebody make fun of me stomping my heel, and
I was gonna get to that eventually here, because I'm a heel stomper myself.
Yeah, I know. I love it. I love it. And honestly, it's not that I'm not a loud enough person, but it gets my kids' attention. They know that's I remember my brother's high school coach, Rich Belcher. He was a great coach. He used to make this weird, I'm not even gonna try to make it, it'll be embarrassing, but he used to make this sound. It wasn't a whistle, it was like a little holler, and his kids knew. Yeah. So for me, it's stomping the heels, but of course, I get some guy making fun of me, that I do that publicly. And it's like, I had to address that. So yeah, there's stuff out there, but, it doesn't stop us.
Yeah. Love it. No, you're going to take me to the heel stomping part. So, no, I appreciate it, because it's the thing I get made fun of the most by my own kids, but it gets their attention. It's not me cussing.
Yep.
If I do cuss, it's rare, but it also catches their attention, but it's more okay, here's my way to get my frustration. I'm going to stomp my foot, or I also do kind of the double stomps when I'm sitting in my chair. And, but it's always if we're watching film, they know what's coming sort of thing. So it's always a little, let's make fun of Coach Edens here. But I
think they make fun of you, but I think they love it too.
Oh, for sure. No, for sure. No, they'll giggle. I hear them giggle when it gets to a point where I'm in full stomp mode. Boy, yeah.
I guess maybe it's the fact that I wear heels and you can hear the
Sure. But there was one time, maybe being a fellow heel stomper, I did it one time, and I felt like a jolt right up my spine. I just must have hit my
nerves just right.
Oh my gosh, I felt like I was going to get paralyzed for a second. It was just brutal.
I gotta say, when I was super, super pregnant with my second, he was born 2 days after our last game. I was in Kobe's at that point, and the stomping was much, you're almost, with the flat versus the heel.
Yes.
But I've actually never broken a heel.
Nice.
But they get a little loose sometimes.
For sure.
The right foot.
Awesome. Uh, King Hoops. I talked to Christina about this. I'm going to say, oh, shoot. I'm going to say probably the last, I don't know if I can go 5 years, but I'm going to say the last 3 or 4 years for sure. Probably the premier girls basketball conference in the state of Washington. Would you agree?
I think it's tough. I mean, for sure, we are a tough league. Night in
And
and
then I
night.
would say too, let me pile on that too. I will say, you throw, shoot, I guess I can't say entirely with Wesco, but you throw us and GP in there, and obviously our combined playoffs,
Our
gauntlet.
district is, yeah, this district thing that we've kind of came back to. We used to do it, years ago, but
Right.
Had a hiatus for a while. But
Yep.
yeah, I would say, the past few years it's been, definitely one of the top. I struggle because I think Spokane, I think the basketball they play over there is like second to none. So it's hard for me to
Yeah.
say that, but I mean, that's just me being fully honest. But yeah, I mean, I think the competition night in and night out in our league is insane. I mean, there are no gimmies. And then, take the success we had maybe in the last, 3-4 years. Everybody wants to beat us. And,
Yep.
this last year I experienced it even more than,
Yep.
because the coaches have wanted to beat us for,
Yep.
4 years, 5 years. But when the players want to beat you,
Yeah.
it's all about the players, right? And so,
Yeah.
last season, I told my kids that we were right there so many times, but everybody wanted us because of what we did the year prior. And
Exactly. Yep.
and with the young-ish, less experienced team that we had, it showed out as 12 losses.
Well, and it's another challenge that with a younger group, that's transitioning from some key players that your program had the years prior. That's an even tougher expectation for them to have to navigate, on top of the basketball side of things, let alone, we talked about that. When you get to a level as a program, and you guys are certainly going to be there for sure, when you get to a level of program where you have the success that we consistently do, for some of those weaker programs, you're their season, you're on their schedule for that particular night. You're not going to be afforded any easy nights to where you just get to roll in the gym more times than not, and that's, I think, kind of the ultimate sign of respect for a program is, shoot, if a program finds a way to get you, man, they're going to celebrate it like crazy. They're going to enjoy it.
But I gotta say, our league is, I mean, I love being in this league. I love the coaches. I love to get to know the kids, and you get to a point, I think, early on when you're coaching, you're so competitive and you just want to win, and you think, the other team's like the enemy. But then, once you get acclimated and you kind of get more of that camaraderie in the league, and you've been around, and now, parents from other teams have opinions, and especially if they're positive, you just sort of get to this place where it's like, man, we're sort of in this thing together.
Agreed.
And so it's been fun. I got to say, I've been really bummed about some of the turnover in our league, with especially female coaches.
Yep.
I just feel like the mentorship's not there for them. They, on a, district AD level. And so the last few years have been, really with the help of Dan. I think when he asked me to join the association board, I was like, I don't think I can, I don't think I have time to do anything more. But at the same time, I think it was just the nudge that I needed to know, like, hey, it's my time to start giving back. Cause I'm a forever learner. I think I focus so much on, internally on what more I need to know and learn to really be great. But I have so much to give, I think. And so, I feel like the last few years I've tried to do that more, but it's been very disheartening to see, female coaches that want to be in the game, that are really, juggling, a job, teaching, coaching, and kids, and to see them go because they made, and it literally sometimes is just not a big mistake. And
right.
Actually.
Sure. No, there's going to be so many, challenges to it and layers to it. And if you don't have that support to maybe just even keep them in the game, maybe if that outreach from an AD or an administrator that says, hey, you're doing a great job, hang in there. If you can get through that season, and maybe the next season starts to get a little easier. And I think that's the biggest challenge just in coaching in general, but taking our angle with girls basketball, those first 5 years. If you can find your way in those first few years, I think it's even the first 3 years. Actually, I heard this from an official's perspective too, kind of the same thing. We're struggling, everyone's struggling with officials right now.
Yeah.
And those new ones, if we can get them past year 3, then that longevity starts to, like, hey, I can do this. I've got support. And I
Yeah.
think there's certainly the same thing with girls coaches as well. I would totally agree with that. What are some advantages of being a female head coach?
I have to think that, having maybe understanding females a little bit better,
Sure.
you
Sure.
know,
At the
uh,
top of the list. Yeah.
yeah, I think, for me, I think I always say my superpower is, I don't have one that's going to make me any money. But I'm very, I know people well. I do people really well. And so for me as a coach, that's probably been my biggest thing. And I think part of it is I think I'm coaching females and I understand them.
Yep.
I can read a look, and
Yes.
I'll
Yes.
just go right up to the kid. And I am a dress immediately kind of person.
Yes.
So even if I'm in a tiff with a friend or whatever, I got to get it out because
Right
otherwise
away. Yep.
you're in it. And so I think that definitely is sort of thinking that I think I understand, females as a female coach better. I have a bit of an advantage being in the community that I kind of played in and have lived in and grown up in.
Sure.
So
Yep.
there's a little bit of familiarity there
Yep.
where like I know what these kids are going through. I just, um, so I think that that's a piece of it. What other advantages?
No, I think those are great pieces with regards to your, you know, understanding a certain look, and that could be a look with you and them, or how about player to player,
Yep.
looks or
Sure.
daggers,
I will say I know how you not sit here and tell me you did not have a negative feeling towards her right now, and we need to talk about it. Do we need to talk about it?
Yes.
Do you guys need to talk about it? How can I support you guys? Or like an extra little physicality thing. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I am not, and so,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's really, I think it sucks to be my kid. It sucks to be my, student or player, because you're not really getting away with anything. I remember
Right.
early on in teaching I taught PE for about 8 years. So I gave that up a few years ago. When I was headed to having my 4th kid and trying to coach, and I just
Right.
thought I had to give. And thankfully my husband totally supported me in choosing coaching. But I just, oh shoot, I lost my frame of thought. What was I talking about?
Just talking about physicality with kids and looks with
Oh
girls. And
yeah. So when I was teaching, our department was like, there is absolutely no swearing in our department. You take a 0 for the day and you're done. And this is me early teaching, and I was like, man, I can't. I heard that because I hear and see everything, and so
yes.
my poor students, they just never got away with anything. And I think holding my coaches accountable. I think that I see and catch if they're a little less prepared or
Yeah.
whatever. And so I think that using that superpower has been good, but it's also been a challenge as a leader to kind of have the right approach about
Sure.
these things, or what do you let go and what do you not. But
Yeah.
their standards. So
Yeah. What do you choose to prioritize? I think as all of us as young coaches, felt like we had to have our hands on everything, and maybe kind of overwhelmed ourselves I think at times. Whereas as we've gotten older, the kind of whole win thing, what's important now sort of thing. And, you got to pick and choose. And at the same time, you need to hold true to who you are, as you spoke to this, early on. You don't want to waver in that. I would also say too, and you can speak to this, one of the advantages of being a female head coach is, how about being in a position of power and influence, showing your young ladies that, hey, I can do this. If you want to do something like this, I can do this as a female. I don't need to be a male head coach to be able to be in the basketball, even though it's a stereotype. I can be a female and lead a team or a program or a classroom, whatever it may be. Would you agree with that?
yeah, and it's I'm glad you brought that up, because I should have said that when you asked me. I don't think I realized that. Like I said early on, I really think it was the nudge that I got from Dan to sort of
Right.
own that a little bit and be in
Sure.
that moment. But I will tell you that even early on, I had kids, they would say the stuff they'd say, like, you're such a role model, just seeing you do this with 2 kids and teach.
Yes.
be a wife and have this other side business. Like, they were very much like, oh,
Yep.
wow, you're awesome. And it's like, okay, you don't,
Yeah.
I didn't fit in it. And I was a part of a Title IX committee, for the school for a couple years. And, one of there was a powerful moment in that experience where, it was kind of a topic that was tough about the weight room and sharing it with the guys programs and this and how the weights, just a little
Sure.
bit of that conversation.
Right.
And I, sort of spoke up in a room that was, there was half males, half females ish. And so we would hope so, at least Title IX. Um, and after I spoke up and I said the kind of tough, I'm all about tough conversations or tough comments. So I made a tough comment, and there was a female athlete in there, and she wasn't mine. I mean, I wish she would have been playing, but she's a softball girl.
Yeah.
And that gave her enough confidence to speak up. And then when she spoke up, everybody listened,
So when you say tough comment, is that a tough comment because it's going to make males feel uncomfortable?
I think it was just pointing out something that was
A reality.
equal because it was like looked equal.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't. And so I was, and it's funny because the conversations were happening, and this is me, my overthinker. I had to find the right words to say,
Yep.
and I not pass up that opportunity in the room, because once it's the next topic, you're on to something else. And so, I had to, because of, I was the voice of girls in the school. And so, and it was awesome, because it was not a big deal, but it was definitely pointing out the inequity. And then when the players stepped in and agreed, then changes were made.
How about these parallels to our circumstances in our climate today? Those uncomfortable conversations we need to be having. I'm sorry, but the fact that you have to use the word uncomfortable or tough question, I mean, let's just think about that for a second. That just in and of itself kind of shows the challenges and stereotypes that are out there that we need to, let's get out of that inequity, even that word. Why is it even as I told Dan, we were talking about kind of the whole Black Lives Matter movement, that I just, so struggle with. And I would say the same thing too with Title IX and males and females. Why is this even a debate? Why are we having this? It's just mind boggling. These are conversations. I mean, I'm not going to play the naive card. I know it's out there, but I'm appalled that, again, why is this a debate? It's just stupefying.
Yeah.
We need to be about people, male, female, whatever color, ethnic background, whatever it is, we're people first.
Well, I think you spoke to it a little bit, where you're like, okay, well, as a female, you're showing these other females that they can do it. And it's like, that is, we're talking about where we are in our society right now, where, what is the percentage of Black coaches, or whatever,
Yes.
And I think it matters. And I think what you said, something about having uncomfortable conversations and just bringing it up and showing up imperfect is better than not showing up at all,
Yep.
But just, I tell the kids, this is one of our life lessons that we teach. Communication is literally the most important component.
And not with your thumbs. And not with your thumbs.
Yeah, exactly. Of any relationship, I mean, if there's ever a disagreement between a husband and a wife, or a best friend or a teammate, it's always because of a lack of communication to the depth that it was necessary. People, assumptions were still made because we weren't clear enough, and so I think that that's a huge thing, is like, and we say uncomfortable because it is uncomfortable, because just like you said, the second somebody brings up, we're talking about basketball and everything's honky-dory, and then you bring up, the fact that, I got questioned because I was a female or something, and now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't want to say anything that I'm not supposed to, but I want her to know I support her,
Yeah.
But I think that, taking that risk, if you will, and putting yourself out there and trying to be a part of the solution is all anybody can do. Boy, tough.
You bring up we could have a whole another hour of a communication, topic, but it's one of our struggles we dealt with mid-season this year for us. And talk about communicating with your thumbs. We allowed a social media thing. Somebody put something out on social media that just drove our team in two different directions. And first of all, there's nothing that frustrates me more than social media and young ladies. Not that I'm not again, you can use it, it's great, fine. But if it has to do with team stuff, I'm just gonna go nutso, because my patience for that is just it's not gonna be there for that. Just because, again, as we talked about, that's not communicating really. It's not me and you having a conversation face to face.
No,
So
you're hiding behind a screen.
oh, my thumbs are way more powerful than what's coming out of my mouth, because I like to hide behind it. That's how teenagers work. But yet, if you confronted them about it, no, I didn't say that. That's not what I meant. Okay, well, it's numbing,
It
but it
is.
was a huge thing. It took on a life of its own, and I said, okay, so, and what wasn't understood on both sides was the perspective that both sides took it from.
Yep.
They didn't really realize the reality of, oh, I didn't know they would take it that way, or okay, well, this is why we ultimately go back to not doing team things social media wise and what have you. But yeah, communication, massive thing. And I would say in girls sports more than boys.
Yeah.
More than boys, for sure.
I'm not sure if necessarily girls are more sensitive. I just think that maybe they hold on to things longer, or
Agreed.
or they're afraid of the confrontation. It's just maybe not our
Yep.
natural instinct, if you will, to do the confrontation, whereas the boys confront and they're done.
Right.
Or they
Agreed.
fight. Physically fight, and then they're done. Like whatever.
Right. No, I use that all the time. And girls will hang on to things too. Like we can say, hey, we're good, but they hang on to things. It's not really good until they're really ready to let go.
Yeah, for sure. But
awesome.
yeah.
Well, let's talk about Eastlake Lake Stevens this year. I wanted to get this on here.
Okay.
So multiple overtimes.
Yes. Oh, but that's true. I forgot. Both of them were overtime.
The first one was double.
Yep.
And that was off of a sequence for us. We were in like a 3-game stretch, or 3 out of 4 maybe. Oh geez, we had Snohomish 2 nights earlier where we went to double overtime, and then Edmonds Way the Friday before where we went to overtime. So we were
that
just
might have helped you a little bit.
I did. I would agree. But shoot, okay. So game 1, you guys just had us stymied. We couldn't shoot worth.
Yeah. It was crazy. I think we're up 14, and you had pulled Reagan out, and he was out for a while, and so we kind of held that. She came back in, she scored like 15 or 16 points in like 2 seconds.
Well, let's just say she and I had a conversation, and she needed to sit for a while. So we'll go with that. Yeah.
I it's funny because, again, like those are things I don't miss. Yeah. Even in the heat of a game, because I am just like really a people person. And so I saw all of that, and I was like, okay, we have a chance. We got to hold this thing. She's coming back at some point. Yeah. And when she came back, we just weren't ready for her. And
because we got to a point, again, I think it was 14 as big as it got.
I think so.
Okay.
Because we struggled a little bit. I feel, if I remember correctly, early on in that game, you threw some weird double teams and left people open, and we were trying to adjust to that. And I think we figured it out by halftime. We had a decent lead.
Yeah.
I think we may have extended it a tiny bit by the end of the third, and then the fourth is you guys. I think it was the fourth you went off.
Yeah, we got down. I think it was like 6 minutes to go. We got going downhill. The objective was to try to get to the free throw line, and because that was kind of our last resort, get to the free throw line, score, this clock stopped, and then just try to get it to single digits with 4 minutes to go. And then after that, it was, you guys started to get a little tight.
Oh yeah, we've thrown the ball away, and that some of it is being where we were in the season, having had that injury. We had just switched over to a new point guard, then she got hurt, so then we had to go back to it was brutal. We were on I think that was our 4th loss in a row.
Right.
They were all great teams, and we were right there, and if we kind of had our everybody where we wanted them to be, I think we would have performed a little bit better, maybe not one, but yeah, that was tough. So you guys, we got
lucky. We found a way to tie it up, and then you guys just were struggling with us extending pressure. And honestly, my comfort zone with extending traditionally with teams that we've had, I haven't seen the real big incentive. You guys have more so than certainly I think we have. You guys have extended quite a bit, or at least have in the past. Whereas my old guys, godfathers, I like to call them, finally convinced me to say, hey, you got to go this route because this is going to be your last chance to try to dig in. And
Totally.
I've just been so resistant to it because there hasn't been the 10-second in the backcourt. Now, moving forward, I could see us still doing that a little more. Yeah, a little more incentive.
Yeah.
But I just didn't think we necessarily had the depth to be able to do it. Didn't want to run our kids ragged for 28 minutes trying to extend all the time.
Well, and as you mentioned earlier, your numbers have never been huge either.
Right.
So that's always a factor,
Yep.
And so, yeah, definitely with pressing, it's absolutely a factor. I think, I think that having a solid point guard is not a common thing in high school basketball. So
Right.
I think that's why I think the pressure sort of helps. And I think you guys definitely were able to expose that a little bit.
Yeah, it sped you up a little bit. You take some quick shots. They're late.
Yep.
Now, I can't say me, playing you guys both times this year, I was really stubborn. I really had a tough time. So we went to the Ken Roberts School of Junk Defense.
Uh-huh.
And you guys saw it with GP the night before. And so we decided, okay, we're not going to allow Keely to go for 30 and 20. I think she probably did.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Did 29.
And yeah, exactly. But okay, hey, we're going to leave people open. We're just going to force them to make shots. She's just such an immovable force. And then game 2 in the playoffs.
Actually, in the first game, I think you left my freshman open.
Yes, we did.
That's the game where we're like, okay, like she is where she's going to be. I think after that, it was like, you're not swinging anymore. And she was so mad. She was like, I want to keep swinging.
Yeah.
I was like, you have.
Yeah, she had 12. Didn't she have 12?
I think so. That was her best. I think that was her best.
Of course it is. Anything against the Vikes is always.
But I mean, you did leave her open, so.
Oh, just nuts. I was talking to GC about this the other day. We played them, and some girl that's like the 7th person on their roster hitting threes like crazy, and brother.
That's some of the you take, when you do that. But I honestly think, we don't want to turn into robots either. I mean, yeah. I think tell our kids to take risks, and then as coaches, we're afraid to do it because, so many people are impacted by it.
Yeah, right.
But it's so fun because once you've done it, now you can do it when you need it.
Yes.
I remember one year when it was just tough against Woodinville, one of the tough Woodinville teams. I had just watched, I can't remember, it was one of the 30 for 30s or something. It was like, I don't know if it was the Bad Boys or it was something. It was extreme. It was an extreme episode. I wish I remembered exactly which one it was.
Yeah.
And they started fouling really early.
Oh.
They're like, you know what? And I went with it, and talk about like feeling really little in a bit. Everybody was pissed because it was a quad and we're extending, but we closed the gap and we almost gave ourselves a chance. Now I haven't tried it again, but having had been there once, it's like you're not going to be, if you ever need to use it again.
Yeah. No, we, in fact, with Arlington, which was game 1 for us this year, we got down 10 early in the season this year. We just really, for whatever reason, we would get down big, but we found ways to navigate getting back. And I think what helped us with you guys was our game against Arlington, because we were down 10 with 4 minutes to go. And again, the only thing we really could go to was we got to get downhill and get to the rim. And same kind of approach with you guys. We needed to score. The clock stopped and hope for some quick shots or turnovers to kind of get, the ball back, and, it paid some dividends. But in game 2, we tried to do the same thing early. And again, with Keely, I'm imagining you guys saw everything. I mean, really, you probably saw everything just because she was such a dominant force. Us leaving somebody open or bringing a double for her, or probably a triple, I would imagine at some point with some teams you probably faced. But I got so stubborn with, we're going to front her, and then shot goes up, we're going to go box her out with 2. And yet she's still, you guys are still staying true to your stuff. You're still running, high-low stuff. You're still ball gets
Ah,
skipped to weak stuff. I mean,
Randy, I think
are you
our
okay?
internet froze up here for a second.
Oh, I've got you still. Are you okay?
I can't even hear you.
Uh-oh. Here, I'll pause. Are you still there? Okay, so back, we just dealt with a little technical challenge real quick. So game 2, I was being uber stubborn, and I think we were up 10 maybe at half this time. And you guys made a quick run. Your little guard you didn't have in game 1 got a few buckets. Number 10 for you hit some huge hoops. And then we just tried to stay true to, I just felt like, okay, we're going to come up with some timely baskets, but it just seemed like but you guys didn't lead until the very end. If I
Right.
looked at stats right the other day, till the very, very end, in fact.
Of regulation, right?
Of regulation, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember. I know Haley came off. She sat for a minute, came off, hit a big 3.
Right to start.
And,
okay, let's go there.
right?
So we're denying her touches, not going to let Haley beat us. If Keely's going to get hers, it's fine. She gets loose, hits a 3 right out of halftime. And then that just kind of seemed like that was the hook that needed to get you guys kind of rocking and rolling.
You know what's funny is I don't think she really hit anything else after that.
She didn't.
But that was enough, I think, to maybe mentally rally your girls a little bit.
Yes.
But like you said, our little Emily, she's a good little mid-range.
Yes.
And she's got a quick step. And then defensively, she did a couple things. We talked about in the banquet, there was this one play where she came down and she either scored or something. We pressed or she was able to get back on D and stop a transition bucket that no human being should ever be able to stop.
Yes.
And then she came down and either had an assist or another random mid-range jumper. And so that was huge. And then there was a kiddo that comes off the bench that you guys fouled her. And I can't remember if this was actually in overtime, and she hit her free throws. I mean, I think you fouled the right person. And so, yeah, I mean, I definitely think I think that there was a little bit of that rivalry feeling in that game.
For sure. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Which is kind of fun, sort of stepped up, and I think this time luck was on our side a little bit.
Yeah. Law of averages, as they say. We probably should have got beat the first one and probably should have won the second one, but, kind of how that goes.
I got to say, like, watching, because I don't know if I feel like we played in the regular season other years too, maybe just off season, but
yeah,
Reagan really grew up. I mean, she really developed under you, and she just, was able to be such a great leader on that team. And
well, I appreciate that. She, I will honestly, and if she ever catches this, that's fine. I'll take it. The most challenging player I've ever had to coach. Not even a question. And I've had great kids, so again, I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. But in terms of, and maybe that's my own fault. I've had great kids, and so here there are probably many coaches that deal with talented kids, but can be challenges in a lot of variety of ways. I just haven't had that side of things.
Yep.
Fortunately, but at the same time, I think it forced me to grow as a coach. How am I going to keep her invested and involved and develop? She went through some struggles her junior year, and we struggled as a result because she just didn't necessarily know how to lead appropriately.
Yep.
Can be a little abrasive at times, but that's a little bit of the competitor in her too. And I think the girls needed to understand that. I don't think you've played with a competitor like Reagan in your lifetime.
Yeah.
And this is how competitors work. They're alpha dogs for a reason.
For sure.
So you're either going to take it and understand her bottom line is she wants to win. So if you want to come along with, that's great. And then the flip side of that was, okay, Reagan, you're not necessarily going to have the competitors that are like you. And so you need to have a balance here. You
got to meet them in the middle, or you got to I always tell them, find a way to get what you want.
Yes.
Sometimes you might have to present it a little smoother with this one person, and you can tough with this person, and you got to know your people, and leadership is not automatic. And
agreed.
Honestly, I don't think we have, I think when you're in building and you have some of that extra time, you can really work on those things.
Right.
When you're not, I think you're at a disadvantage for sure.
Yeah,
From
I'd agree.
and getting them to understand those things, because
Yeah.
how often do you have to have those conversations? How much time do you?
No kidding. No, that was one of the things I mentioned on one of the podcasts here where, my first 2 years I was off campus teaching at MP, for those first 2 years. And, we had talent and I could work on the relationship side of things, but we really didn't take that leap until my first year on campus, 2007, 8. My gosh, I was on campus, the girls could check in, you can have those side conversations if necessary. And at that juncture, that was by far our best year yet. We were able to you could get those relationships and understandings instead of maybe have things fester at school all day and then maybe you'll address it at practice. You're at a disadvantage if you're on campus, if you will. So awesome. Hey, a couple more things and then we'll get you going. Again, I really, really appreciate your time, and these are fantastic things to get out there and so on and so forth. Are you a big stats analytics person?
Not really. I mean, I look at them only to be able to help me understand and maybe have an approach for a game plan.
Okay. Sure.
I'll look at them to sort of help me to understand like a what happened sort of deal. Was it something that was common or not common? Was it a fluke, or
Gotcha. Yeah.
what does one kid do to us traditionally? So I use it for that, but not the one thing that we do chart and show, and we do effort points.
Oh, okay.
But effort points, one of my assistants she's so like organized on Excel and stuff. And so
yeah, nice.
Figured out how we can use her for that. And so we do stat that because we just feel like putting that in front of them, that's all the gritty stuff you want your players. And so we post that every week, and man, it's been fun to sort of see what good effort points look like. And when you have dominant posts, they own it because of the boarding and the deflections and steals that they're able to get because of their length, or being on that back line in a press or whatever.
Is there some type of reward for weekly winners or a season winner, anything like that?
Yeah, I think the intrinsic reward of being, having it posted and stuff like that. I mean, I'm trying to think. Sometimes we'll do like an ice cream or Starbucks, something like that. And then let's see, at the end of the season, I feel like I put together this huge PowerPoint presentation, and so effort points is always something that's on there. So we talk about the leader of our effort points, and then JV stats it too. So that's another way that we kind of get everybody sort of on a level playing field.
Love it.
So
and all the byproducts of effort points, what those things lead to. I mean, and then of course they're not the traditional box score things you could read in the paper.
Right. It's hitting the floor. It's deflections. It's
love it.
Steals, rebounds. So yeah, it's fun.
So we had shared with us yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, but if we're given the okay, we've been told phase 3 before we'll even get a sniff in our district, but
same.
WI extended until August 15th if you choose to work with your kids. I'm certainly going to plan on it if at all possible.
Yeah.
How about you guys?
I did see that yesterday. And it's funny. I think I even put it in that group coaching text that we have. And for some reason, it didn't go through. Message failed. I was like, okay, maybe that's a sign. No. I hope to be able to do something. I think as long as it's, it makes sense, it's supported, it's safe, and
right.
We'll try to do something. I at this point, I think, I don't remember if you were saying this or somebody was saying, even if it's just to get together for, mental health reasons, just to get in the gym, and even if it's small group or whatever.
Yep.
So yeah, if they extend it, it'll be nice to be able to do something if we're allowed.
Yeah.
My district is really conservative, it seems like, with stuff. So I don't know what we'll be even allowed to.
I feel like we're the same way. I mean, our AD said yes, or 2 days ago, he said until it's phase 3, it's not even a conversation, just with risk management and so on and so forth. And then of course, the protocols you got to have in place. I mean, I know it has fall sports laid out there, but it hasn't said anything about, summer basketball, what that's got to look like.
Well, and we're contact sport and indoor. So I was trying to look at their fall protocol and see what we would be closest to. Yeah. And we really can't say volleyball because, volleyball's indoor, but you're on different sides of the net,
Right.
So I thought maybe look at soccer. But again, soccer's outdoor versus indoor.
Yeah.
So
We actually do a lot of stuff. We actually do during the summer. We do actually a lot of things outdoors. We traditionally don't go inside. We try to find out. We have two at one park. We have two outdoor half courts that we've worked on before. We just got a full court at a park that's single rims and a glass backboard and
Nice.
nets, which is a win.
Yeah. For sure.
But those kind of things. I mean, I know there's like a full court at like Toda Middle School in Marysville. I mean, I know Joe and I have talked about, I don't care, just to get a couple of things up and down, and
Yeah.
I'll coach in a mask if I have to, whatever it
Yeah.
takes to.
Oh, for sure. I'll definitely wear a mask and do it. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, we'll do whatever. I mean, I think our kids are itching, like I said, just to have 28 kids engaged in
It's
our
awesome.
stuff.
Yeah.
We're doing competitions and stuff right now. So I think if things do open up and we have the ability to, even if it's short lived or, just basically putting the ball out there and being the voice to them.
Yep.
Something.
No, I agree. All right. Hey, last one. I always like to close with this because I always try to steal from coaches and kind of what they're doing. And I have my own things that are kind of go-tos, but how do you extend your learning in the summer? What are some things that you dig into to kind of maybe grow your craft?
Yeah. So, for me, definitely summer is a balancing act of, being present with my kids and stuff and
Yep.
being the mom I need to be and the wife I need to be, but also still trying to put some effort into coaching. And honestly, your podcasts have been awesome because I
Well,
can
thanks.
I don't have to watch them necessarily.
Sure.
I mean,
Yep.
but I can organize clothes drawers and do all that kind of stuff and listen to coaches. And thankfully right now I'm engaged with my staff. So whenever I do hear something good, I'll bring it up on our team's call afterwards, just so that it's out there. Cause
Right.
sometimes my biggest struggle is I do things, I write them down somewhere. I'm a note taker.
Sure.
They're not always in the right binder. Pick up the binder and now Layla scribbled all over everything. So
Yeah.
I always say put stuff out in the universe. So that way somebody can, hold me accountable. But
Sure.
I early on having all the virtual stuff this year has been kind of that has helped because I've been able to listen to so many different coaches. And even if I only have time to watch half of the episode or whatever, it's been awesome. And I'm really hoping to get to work on some leadership stuff with the kids in the next 6 weeks or so, or now we have a little bit longer.
Right. Yep.
And I also told my staff that I need to get my staff involved in some education outside of the season too. So I've got to find some clinics that we can do as a staff virtually.
Right.
But yeah, I like to watch film too when I can. My other hang up is I don't have good internet at my house, and so it's really hard. It's hard to watch film. I spend you would think we live. I guess really just kind of putting out there, watching film is also something that's helped me in the early years, but even now, just to be able to say, okay, this is what I thought was going on, but here's what actually is happening.
Joe had mentioned that he had said, because I asked him too, because I always feel like I'm a nerd throwing some older stuff in. But one great point he goes, I actually like to look at stuff and see how far we've come. Like, okay, here's where we started, but here's what we're doing now. And then there's the reverse to that too. Like, boy, what was I doing back then? I was trying to do way too much for these kids, and how maybe much more simple things have gotten now, with kids respectively. So no, really, really good stuff. I certainly appreciate your time. And again, you've been somebody I've looked up to just in terms of your ability to, reach kids and have the success that you've had. To obviously go through such a magical run there in 2018-19 and culminate in a state championship. That in and of itself, I'm sure we could spend an hour and a half on and have a great time with, but certainly well deserved. And I know Eastlake here moving forward is in a great place, and I'm going to continue to admire from afar. So thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, huge thank you to everything that you and Dan have done for growing the girls game. Honestly, especially as Guy has taken that stance and really trying to give back to the game that, really has provided us all so much. So I really, really appreciate the opportunity to be on, and I'm with you guys in the quest to continue to make make things better within the association and within the game. So thanks again. It was a blast to be able to hang out with an adult for a couple hours and talk hoops. So yeah, I just thank you too for the opportunity.
You bet. It's a pleasure and something that I know he and I have talked about quite a bit. In fact, I think we even did on the podcast where I think we came in at the right time because of our passion and pursuit. We felt like the girls' game was lacking behind the boys on a lot of different levels. And as we talked about earlier, we're so much about making the experience for young ladies, if not just as good, better than what the boys is out there. So again, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Randy.